this thing on? Check, check. Welcome back to the studio. If you're new, I'm SLEW. So all the stuff you just saw was all the things I'm working on, the stuff that's going down in the studio. Figure drawing classes that I'm hosting, all of the logistics and coordination that goes into that, which is a nightmare, but also really fun. Also, really leaning into the podcast with Chris, trying to make that show as awesome as it possibly can, putting a lot of time into that, and hiring models, starting to do photography for really epic large-scale painting projects. It's so exciting. But you know, I did take quite a while off YouTube. The title of this video, quitting YouTube. I'm not, certainly not. Is that a joke? I love YouTube more than anything. But I was really building the studio in the summer, and then in like September, I was really stretched and stressed out. So I kind of took off like 4 or 5 weeks from uploading, doing a lot of editing. I was still working a bundle load, but I just needed to like refocus and kind of reorganize what I was actually doing, where I wanted to put my time, what I wanted to make, the things that were kind of more important to me, and just organize a little of my brain function, if you know what I mean. But we're gonna do a Q&A. We got a lot to talk about. We'll talk about a bunch of other stuff, but we're gonna dive into some of these questions I posted on Instagram. Actually, right before we start, just remember to take everything I say with a grain of salt. You know, there's two things that are constant in life, change and hypocrisy. So first question, Cam T Art, do you think you'll ever revisit some of your more abstract style of painting? No, probably not. That's not really my cup of tea anymore. Nothing against abstract painters or anything like that. I just love figurative stuff, and that's what I'm doing. Mike 90, biggest inspiration from living in New York right now? That's a great question. I'm most inspired by the people I've been around and the other artists and creators I've like been able to meet and like work around. You know, I've probably met more awesome artists in the last 4 months than I have like my whole life, and to see really epic people working and making things at a high level is super inspiring to me. And there's so many people around New York City doing that I've gotten to meet through the podcast, and just because I'm trying to hang out with like-minded people. Metavox, highest price for a painting, for a sold painting. I bet a lot of people are interested in that. I certainly was, and are interested for other people. I think the SLEW project, the mural series that I did over the course of a summer in 2018 or 2017, I forgot. That was like a $10,000 budget, and that was more than half of that was actually to pay my videographer and producer who was there with me over the 3 months and filming and editing. But that was the budget, $10,000, which was like the biggest, still probably the biggest to this day. I've sold maybe a half dozen paintings for about $2,000. A lot of paintings from like the $600 to $1,200 range. And then the biggest painting I do know that I sold was this portrait of a Great Dane, a 36-inch oil painting that I spent a lot of time on. That was for $3,000, and that was like my biggest commission. But I don't really do commissions anymore, more like gifts. What is more productive? This is Athena Costini. What is more productive for your practice, long-term or short-term goals? Great question. I love talking about goals because I'm a goal-oriented person. I'm pretty meticulous and iterative, because I think being kind of like strategical with your time and making goals is like really important to then be able to execute. You know, if you want to accomplish something, you need to accomplish perhaps many things along that way a lot of the time. That's just how my brain works. Again, I'm not saying this is the right way, but this is how I do things. So for a long-term goal, you should always have that. And I always think very long time. Big goals usually take 6 months to a year, always lots of time to actually accomplish something. But within that time frame, you should always make smaller, realistic, achievable goals that you tick off every week, every week, and then every month, maybe something a little bigger. Small, obtainable goals that lead to something bigger. And however you want to break that down and whatever your goals are, I think that's a great way to start. That's what I do. And I just am regurgitating this stuff from like self-help, YouTube videos and books that I've read when I was younger. And like, those are the things that like, resonated with me. So I am not a self-help motivator. Mir X, how was life 5 years ago and what has changed? That's a great question. Because I think that I'm doing the same things I was doing 5 years ago, like literally like grinding, making projects and filming everything I do. Now it's just, the scale is a lot higher. Obviously I'm doing different things, but I'm really doing the same core things, just maybe at a higher level. Maybe there's more, you know, the passion isn't as pure because there's now business and other orientation of things involved, but I really am doing the same thing I was 5 years ago. Ethan Date 7, new merch anytime soon. Yes, actually the old Sword and Serpent hoodies that I had to take offline because something happened with our distribution center. I'm gonna put those back up. There's still like a couple hundred hoodies, really epic. I'm only shipping in the United States, but they're gonna come with a free beanie, stickers, and pins. I think I'll like put that on my website maybe in like 3 weeks or something. And then there will be another drop with new characters, new hoodies and t-shirts like right around the holiday season for Christmas. Really exciting, wow. Emily Hutchinson, 1968. Is there anything you miss about your old studio space? So much, it's my baby. And it's really funny because when I moved here, like I spent 4 years at that old studio every single day, not every day, but I spent more time at that studio in those 4 years than anywhere else in the world. And then I picked up and left and came here, and then I just like never looked back. So it's kind of sad. I have all the videos online to document that wonderful place. I also have a little itty bitty still life of the studio to memorialize it. But what was apparent from the get-go of this place is back in Connecticut, I had a car to go to Home Depot or art stores and transport materials or things. And living in the city, it's way harder. I don't have a car. You know, hardware stores, Home Depot, and art stores are a lot farther away. And then transporting things to the studio is a lot more challenging. So I guess that's probably the biggest thing I miss. But this is by far more superior. There's more space. I have like a kitchenette, a sink. Everything is really wonderful here. It's really the older brother of my old studio. You hear that cop in the back? Brooklyn. Skid Jelly. Do the fantasy novels play a part in the art you do? And if so, how? Probably a little. I mean, visually, not exactly. I mean, I am starting like a Greek mythology series. That's a secret. But I think the idea of like epic worlds and people working really hard to suck you into these worlds with like world building, character arcs, magic systems, all this like grand lore. I just love that. And like having these big backstories, I think it makes me want to have like stories and be able to like, even if I'm just painting like a person or like one little thing, like a face, like what's the backstory behind that? And it inspires me to kind of like chew a little deeper of what I'm kind of talking about or what, you know, visually I want to represent with some sort of story element. If that makes sense. Hugh McHone. Where's somewhere you've always wanted to travel? Japan is like my number one. I've actually been a lot. I've been lucky to travel a lot around the world. My grandma used to live in Europe, and I've been to Southeast Asia. I did a program there for 3 months, but I've never been to Japan. It's my number one place. I just really, really want to go, and I hopefully will one day. Hey, the homie, JCRO, favorite project from Studio Build Out. I know JC is awesome. He's an epic painter. You should check him out. His tag on Instagram should be right there, but he also loves building things. And so I think that's what he's talking about. People don't know one of my guilty pleasures is actually working with wood, building things. I'm no engineer. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I love how things fit together. And one of my deepest dreams when I'm way older, hopefully, is to own my own wood shop or have like really awesome wood shop tools. And so building this studio, I built the French cleats. I built a lot of these desks, cubbies, shelves. I modified this table, desks in there. I built a lot of crap and I love building. So what was the question? Oh, which was the favorite studio build? I don't know, like little everything. Oh, this model stand, you can't see it, but where models stand, it's about 10 inches off the ground, really solid. I carpeted it. It's like really beautiful. I love building. Douglas Ryan Adams, who's your dream podcast guest? I've been asked this a lot recently, and there's like a million. I think Colin Delane or Kid Super, he's in New York. He's like a great painter, but he also does a lot of fashion stuff. Really epic person, it seems. I would love to talk to him. Also, Brandon Sanderson, who's the author of like my favorite fantasy novels that I kind of always talk about. And there's a lot of other awesome fantasy novelists and authors, but Brandon Sanderson does a lot on YouTube and like live streams, and he's very like in social media, and he does a great job communicating. I think he's done other podcasts talking about stuff, so that would be epic. But also like fine artists, Cesar Santos. There's a million people. Jennifer Gennari, who I know is in New York. I did a demo with her. Every realm though, athletes, musicians, directors, photographers, I have a million people on the list. Wilderness Inside Map. What areas of artistic endeavors do you see need more time and focus? Ooh, that's a good question. I have an interesting answer, I think. I do so many different things, not to say I do everything, but like I do production, podcast hosting, coordinating that, managing this art studio. You know, I do a lot of cinematography and videography. I do a lot of editing. I do a lot of coordination for the other parts of the business and managing the studio. Obviously, I paint a lot. I do different types of paintings. And so all of those categories, you know, I only have a certain amount of time. And so I can only give each thing a certain amount of time. Some weeks it's more over here with production and editing. Some weeks it's more painting. But, you know, there's a boatload of time where I just want to paint, you know, like more and more as I do the sort of admin stuff, I'm like, oh, I just wish I could just paint all day. But that's not like realistic. And then there's also honestly parts where I wish I could just do the podcast full time, because I love the podcast. I love talking and communicating and starting out like something brand new, building out that show. But you know, it's like what's tricky with me and sometimes is a bummer is balancing everything. But it's also awesome because I have so much fun in doing all of the other things, and it keeps me very busy without doubt, but also like creatively fulfilled, not to sound all dramatic. Yosef Paper, what is your definition of art today? Oh, I have talked about this before. Oh, it was on a live stream on Patreon, but I feel like I have a sort of hot take on this, and I feel like the word art and the meaning of art has absolutely just like lost its meaning, and it's meaningless. The world we live in today is so saturated with everything. Everyone's an expert. Everyone tries everything. Everyone's a photographer, you know, with the smartphones. You paint something twice, you post on Instagram, and now you're, you know, a fine artist. And I'm not trying to like rip on people trying to be creative. That's not what I'm doing. I just think within art, there should be categories, and there should be very contextual and articulate descriptions for what each artist do. You know, I'm a fine artist that uses oil paint, and I also do like acrylic, graphic stylized abstract faces. I am a producer, I'm a creative director, I, you know, do cinematography, whatever, you know, like the adjectives and descriptor list. You know, I think it's like the artist's job to sort of explain what they do in a very, you know, clear way for people to be able to, you know, consume their work. Specifically, it's a little different with painting. I'm talking about like someone who's slanging paint, just dripping paint on a canvas versus, you know, Cesar Santos or Andrew Tischler, and they're both considered painters, but clearly they're not doing remotely the same thing. And I'm not, you know, ripping on abstract painters. You know, the people I mentioned, Cesar Santos, they aren't doing the same thing as these abstract painters, and vice versa. I'm just saying there needs to be a difference, and there needs to be words and categories for all the different types of things, or else everything loses meaning. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you have painters or let's be specific, if you have naturalistic oil painters everywhere, or we'll just say painters, I'm getting really ranty right now. If you have painters everywhere, you'll find real painters nowhere. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not ripping on abstract painting. That's just the analogy I gave, but I think I'm being clear. Maybe that's a hot take. What do you guys think? Leave them in the comments. I've talked about that before. I like being very specific with what people do and how they do things. I think it's important. Boxers or brief guy? I think I'm a boxer brief guy. I like everything together. Cameron Crane art. Is there a style of painting, drawing, inking that you still haven't tried yet? Totally. I mean, there's a lot, but I think actually to dodge this question slightly, or not really, but you know, there's a lot of stuff in oil painting that I haven't even, you know, delved into that I'm so excited to do, even though I've been using oil paint predominantly for the last 2-3 years. Like there's things that I haven't even, you know, really gone into that I am slowly going into now, like doing really large scale paintings, multi-figures, creating sets and using props and doing photo shoots. I've done a little of that, but like I'm trying to really do it a lot for a year. And then there's also like plein air painting in oil, where you like go out to location. It's mostly like landscape, but you know, you bring all your materials and you paint on the spot for a few hours. So I love that, and I love oil painting. Not that I don't love drawing or inking or sculpting. I would love to try those other things, but the things I'm trying to really pursue and like increase my skills at and like be proficient in, I haven't even done some of those things within the thing I do all the time. Does that make sense? Jameson FCS 1000 Mural Part 2 might be sooner than you think, actually. I'll leave it at that. Before we continue, we gotta talk about the sponsor for today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of different classes ranging from all sorts of different creative and entrepreneurial genres, and they are taught by the leading professionals in those disciplines. I love Skillshare, I really do. I think you cannot beat the prices compared to in-person classes. Like, it's the world we live in today. Everything's at home and, you know, everything's kind of online. And so if you really are trying to pick up a new hobby, there's not a better place than Skillshare. And whether you are like a career professional or you're just a greenhorn newbie looking to put your foot in the door of some creative outlet, you know, Skillshare's classes have levels for every type of person. The entire experience, the user interface, the website, the curriculum, the discussion, how the website is laid out, you know, the entire platform of Skillshare is extremely curated to learn. I have actually watched several Skillshare classes that helped me with photo editing, also art, but the one I like to recommend because he's a fellow YouTuber from the homie Jazza, Mastering Illustration. It's a wonderful class that kind of dives very generically throughout color theory, illustration, everything you need to know about the fundamentals. So for everyone who's interested in using this platform, you can click the link in the video description. The first 1,000 people who do so will get a free trial to Skillshare's premium membership. It is really wonderful. And I really actually believe in Skillshare and the platform and the curriculums that they have. It's really great. Thanks, Skillshare. Kate Moore creates, this is a good question. Do you ever question if you have taken on too much so are unable to paint as often now? Yes, and I think I've talked about this, and I'm very like, I'm being really open now, and I try to be open and honest, but like I do get so burnt out. And this whole building the studio, we're in October now, and it's been what, 5 months, almost 6 months of actually me working here. So it's been a long time and I could stop complaining, but this was a huge move and I put so much work and responsibility on my back. My fault. I'm not blaming anyone but myself, but it was a lot. And yes, also in this last 6 months, it's the least I've painted my whole life, or since I've been painting for the last 6 years. And I knew that going in. I actually did know that because there's other things I want to accomplish and there's other work that needs to be done. All the things that I made and starting all this took a lot of work to build up, and now it's like finally kind of settling down where I have other time to do other things. But that's just a part of the game, and I feel like I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, so like, I think that's something that's helped me. And again, I'm not some masterful genius. I'm just from my perspective and how I analyze my past and what I've been able to accomplish and what I do is like, I think I've always been really ambitious and that's really helped me. But a lot of times I do bite off more than I can chew. And that's like, there's plenty of examples. I'm not just saying I'm so ambitious and I accomplish and execute these massively ambitious things. I think it's helped me to lead towards the super ambitious side, but you know, there's a lot of examples within this studio build that have like, I bit off more than I could chew, and like even budgeting sakes and like, you know, hiring, like all these things that I don't need to go into, but there's certainly times where it's been too much. And you know, you can never know, but I think I would rather be too ambitious than, you know, lack that sort of like exciting, grand goals. Does that make sense? Rant. And that's it. So hopefully you learned something. Stay tuned because we got so much awesome stuff coming. Great guests on the podcast. Check out the Sooniverse YouTube channel and the Instagram. check out the website. I mean, I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff. So just stay tuned. You'll see. I don't need to keep saying it. See you in the next video.